Oh, hi, Robert.
Hi, Robert.
Hello. I was glad I was able to get back here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm greatly honored, and I have to say, first of all, the Critical Drinker and Mahler, you both are two of my favorite story analysts on the interwebs.
Oh,
So
thank you.
it's always a pleasure to stream with you. And Dave Cullen, this is like monumental for me. I've been a fan of yours for years. We've been simpatico for a long time, and it's great to be here. And Gary, I have to say, sir, I was very worried, but I was
Me
worried.
too.
And even Terry had said to me, he goes, I think Gary's gonna watch these episodes, and I'm like, you know what I said to him? I said, you are fair, and you will tell the truth,
That's all I can do.
and you did.
Yes, I told the truth. I mean, like, damage has been done to a lot of fandom, and I would never, if that's the way you feel, like you're burned, you have every right to feel that way. And it's not just that they made bad Star Trek; they made it in such a bad spirit, and then they went after fans, just like
Yeah.
Disney Star Wars did. That's their biggest crime. Making something shitty is making something shitty. That's fine, but going after fans, starting to call them bigots and stuff like that, screw you. Screw you. And that's Kurtzman Trek, but this is Terry Trek. As a lot of people like that. This is not Kurtzman Trek. This is a different beast. And I wouldn't steer you wrong on that.
I
He
was just
did.
saying as
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, man.
I was just gonna. I was just telling people as well how like you and Dave are basically the reason that I watched this because I was completely checked out of Picard. I was completely checked out of modern Star Trek, and like as
Rightfully so.
the weeks went by, like because there was few people who were more critical of modern Trek than yourself, and rightly so. And then you started talking about Picard season 3. Like it's great. It's a completely different thing. I can't believe how good it is. And I was like, what is Robert going on about here? And the weeks and months passed by, and you wouldn't stop. And I thought, God damn, like what?
You
is
just
it
won't
about
shut
this
up
show?
about this.
Yeah, and it's like, well, if someone doesn't like have that much of a thing going on, unless there's something really special about this, and then. We got to the point where it was available to watch, and I know David got a chance to see it, and he started talking, big things about it, and I thought, okay, fine, like I need to take a look at this now. Like two people that their opinions I very much respect, and I think are extremely fair about things, and who have been very critical of Star Trek, are both praising this thing. It has got to be worth at least watching, and it was. But like,
Everybody
I
here,
think
drinker.
you were
Everybody
like
here, drinker is, I believe, is honest. Like Robert's not going to steer you wrong. Robert's one of the few creatives in Hollywood that understands fandom, like completely understands it because he is a fan. So
Yeah.
I will. Robert is telling the truth. The man does not shill. Okay.
Well, it's funny. It's really interesting to me because, like, I've never really been part of the access media, but what people don't understand about when you live and work in Hollywood, it's very easy to get to go to things if you want to. Like, you don't have to, like, because I've worked in Hollywood for such a long time, I know you just know so many people simply because you're still here. And so you get to meet people and go places. I would never sell out my opinion at all, ever. Because I'm incapable of doing it. And I always joke, well, if you pay me enough money, but even then I couldn't shut up. And it's the frustrating thing for me about what's happened to Star Trek is, if you look at the original series, it was essentially an anthology show, kind of like the Twilight Zone, except it had a continuing cast. One week you would get an action adventure show like A Balance of Terror. One week, or Errand of Mercy, the first Klingon episode. One week you could get a humorous episode like A Piece of the Action or Trouble with Tribbles. One week you could get a romance, like Conscience of the King, where the girl turns out to be a crazy person that is killing people. So it was all different. Yeah, I know. And it was all different kinds of flavors, but at the time it was being written by some of the greatest fantasists of the time. You had people like Robert Bloch, who wrote Psycho. You had Samuel Peoples. You had George Clayton Johnson, who wrote Twilight Zone episodes and wrote the novel co-wrote the novel Logan's Run. And Richard Matheson, who wrote for the Twilight Zone, also another great novelist. He wrote I Am Legend.
I Am Legend.
One of the great, books. That was the book that was the first horror novel I read, and I loved it so much because of Omega Man. So Star Trek had this great writing pedigree. And when I was a kid growing up, it was the three shows that were the triumvirate was Outer Limits, Twilight Zone, and Star Trek. And they led me to read. I was reading science fiction. I joined the science fiction book club when I was 9, 10 years old, and started reading and noticing that the authors that had written these great TV episodes were also novelists, and great novelists. And Star Trek had that writing. I mean, for the first 20 years of its existence, even the animated series brought back some of the writers. So from 1966 to 1987, to the advent of Next Generation, which was my childhood and junior high and high school years, my formative years, and then when Star Trek transitioned to the motion picture, which Drinker, you and I did a stream about.
Yeah.
Star Trek, though, sort of grew and evolved as I did. So it took me from childhood literally to adulthood. And that's why it means so much to me. And they were always sort of stories that had real deep resonance in terms of what does it mean to be a human being? And what does it mean to have friends? And what does it mean to sacrifice and have honor? And all of these things that I think a lot of people get from religion or got from other places. I didn't come from a very religious household, even though I was raised in a Jewish home. It wasn't very religious. So to me, the Talmud was Star Trek, as messed up as that might be. But I think the great works of fantasy literature, I mean, at the same time, that's when I first read Lord of the Rings. You first read The Hobbit and you first read Lord of the Rings. And, all of these writers were writing allegorically about human existence. Tolkien was worried about the industrialization of his beloved England and what would happen, and the Ents being chopped down by Saruman and Isengard. I mean, that was his nightmare scenario, and he put it into fantasy form. And so we were given the gift of all of this great writing in novels and even in television that was written by people that really thought long and hard about what it was they were doing. Because a lot of the time they couldn't directly address these subjects, especially on TV, because standards and practices wouldn't, like, you couldn't talk about the Vietnam War on a TV show on American television in the 60s. But on Star Trek, you can make an episode called The Private Little War, where the Klingons are arming the village people and the Federation has to arm the hill people so they aren't destroyed. Well, no one knew that was about Vietnam because it's a sci-fi show. And there was a lot of great writing. And that is something, the problem with people writing Star Trek now is they're not great writers and they don't have life experience. They've only ever written television and they've only ever watched television. They haven't read books. They have no historical, they've never read classic science fiction. And you can't write science fiction of any kind, especially for the movies or TV, if you have no literary background, because it's a literary genre.
Yeah, you would need like a basis. Like all the writers back then had been to war.
Yeah,
got climbed mountains. Were students of mythology. Like that's important for writing, and you're so right, Robert. Like these people haven't left their room, their bedroom, much less. And they're just fans of TV, so it's just meta and pop and irony and pop culture references now, and it's just like, ooh.
Well, I tell you what, like, really pisses me off about modern Star Trek is the idea that the people on board these starships act more like they're in high school.
Oh,
they're given back chat to their superior officers. They just do whatever the fuck they feel like. They have these big emotional outbursts. They disobey orders. Just whatever. Like, it's just absolute pandemonium. Every single week, there's just another person doing stupid shit. Whereas, Picard had that as well. Like the first 2 seasons, nobody seemed to have any respect for Picard.
No.
It was all about breaking him down as a character.
That the
It was
language
about
of the characters was too contemporary. It was like
exactly, yeah.
they
People
were
were calling each other
speaking.
dude and stuff. Like,
They
oh,
were speaking Gen
awful.
Z. What was the? You remember the was it Daj or Soji? I can't remember which one it was. And they're in an apartment, and the guy's like, "Dude, I like totally got
Yeah, dude, yeah.
You're in the dates room right now. Oh my god, your replicator menu is like tragic or whatever." And it's like vocal fry in there.
Yeah, I just wanted to murder myself when I heard that. It's just like that's not Star Trek in the slightest. But then you get to this, and it's like the best I can liken it is the first two seasons of Picard were like a generic, grim, dark, edgy, wannabe edgy sci-fi
Vanity
show.
project.
Yeah,
But it was terrible science fiction. Just
with
terrible
a little
science fiction.
with a little veneer of Star Trek like begrudgingly like stretched over it. This is much more like the heart of it is Star Trek with a little bit of a modern edge, and there's occasional bits of ironic humor and stuff, and it never gets grating. It never comes across as like forced or over the top. Just little nods to like advancing things a little bit. That's the difference. I think the intent behind this is to tell a good Star Trek story.
Characters.
And I
All
fucking
about
love the
characters.
fact that Picard has a spine again. You know, when people are going after him, he bites back. He stands up for himself now, and he defends his position, and he actually calls them out on their bullshit on occasion. It's like finally he acts like Picard again. He doesn't just sit there and go, "I'm so sorry. I tried my best." You know, it was just this pathetic old man from the first season. Now he actually acts like an admiral, and I love the fact that Riker's in it again. And Riker, damn, he gets some great
He steals the show, man.
storylines because
Jonathan
he was.
Frakes is great.
I always loved Riker from back in the day, but he always felt like just that underutilized character because we all know why he was created. He was basically just a backup for Picard. Like if audiences
He's the
didn't
action
take to-
man.
yeah, exactly. He was Kirk 2.0. If audiences hadn't taken to Picard like this old sort of stuffy, bald diplomat guy who's like super cultural and stuff, he was there to take over, basically.
Yeah.
But it never happened. People love Picard. And so he always felt like a guy who didn't have a clearly defined role. This show gives it to him. It gives him great storylines. It gives Jonathan Frakes a chance to actually act, which is something he doesn't often get a chance to do. And he's really good. And I love the fact that he steps in to defend Picard at times. Like, there was a point where Seven of Nine gets kind of lippy with Picard in an early episode. And Riker just steps right in and goes, "You watch your fucking tone, Missy. You're talking to an admiral right now." And I just love that. That never would have happened in the first couple of seasons.
But they've
happens
captured
now.
Drinker. They've captured the relationship between Picard and Riker. That, to me, that duo really, and because that's what I wanted to see. We didn't get it at all in Nemesis the last time.
No.
Well, okay, we saw them in season 1 together, but finally having them work together, work through issues. I think it's safe to say they command a starship together, overcome problems together. That and the fact that it's not just the relationship that we knew, right, from TNG and the movies, but it also, the way Terry has written it so beautifully, is that he's captured what it would genuinely be like if these two old friends and old experienced officers from back in the day were this much older together, still doing the job. And it's got that sense of absolute balls to the walls. Like, I really do feel like it's the older crew coming back and getting to contribute to this 25th century one last time in a meaningful way. I just think it's beautiful,
It plays a lot with the fact that they are older, and like with age comes not just the fact that like they're a bit old and creaky now, and like they can't do the rough and tumble fighting routine that they used to do back in the day. Because there's a few jokes about that, like, I've got bad knees and your hands are stiff with arthritis, so I hope we don't have to do too much shooting and running. But just also the fact that, like, maybe as you get older, you get a little bit more cautious, a little bit more ossified, and more reluctant to go in guns blazing. Because Riker, when he's put in command of a starship, I don't know how much I can even fucking say here, so I'm just like winging it. But like, yeah, he's a much more cautious kind of captain of a starship than you might expect from him, and partly it's because he's had this responsibility suddenly thrust upon him that he didn't expect, and also because he is older, and perhaps as you do get older, you get a bit more conservative and a bit more cautious about things. And he has to work past that, and there's very much this feeling of like we're not the young guns that we were 30 years ago, where we were out like kicking ass across the galaxy. It's different now, but they're trying to reconnect with that and rise to the challenge. And I think that's great. Like it's a great timeless idea in storytelling of like the old hero coming out of retirement to take on a new challenge. And this show does it really well.
You know what else, Drinker and Dave, and you guys can speak to this. In, I'll say, the 4th episode, there is a large problem to surmount.
Yes.
And one of the great things that you see is that everybody has a part to play.
Yep.
You get the sense that you're on a ship of people that they're all disciplined, they all are good at their jobs, and they all contribute something to surmount the problem. Even
you mean apart from talking about their feelings and crying?
Exactly. And one of the things I always talked about, the thing about Star Trek, it always instilled in me this idea to be the best kind of person I could be. And modern Star Trek, everyone's kind of mediocre, and you can get by on mediocrity, but you can't be on the final frontier in a ship where you're in a life and death situation, and you have to know your job and know everyone else's jobs so well that you can work as a team to solve a problem. And I think that it was really refreshing to see in this 4th episode, it's really a triumphant, very Star Trek moment when you see all these people working together to solve this problem. And that's when I really felt like this is the Star Trek that I've missed so much. Watching people come together and
Robert, to your point, sorry, Drinker, you go ahead there.
No, you go first. No, I'll jump in later.
Sorry. To your point on episode 4, without giving anything away, also what was so incredibly refreshing is, for the first time, and I can't remember, we have a character admitting to another character about something they shouldn't have done, or resolving something, or reflecting on their choice, reflecting on what they said. And I just thought, finally, we've got some 3-dimensional, self-aware characters who are capable of taking on new information without getting emotional, without getting angry, right? Not taking things personally, and resolving it and then getting back to work like professional military Starfleet officers should, which is the exact opposite of the kind of Starfleet officers we've been getting with all of the snark and all of the attitude on Discovery and everything else, the lack of professionalism. So that was another high point for me, was finally seeing people act the way they should act.
I really like Shaw as a character.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah.
Like I can't, that guy's grown on me so much. Like, and just for the people watching, just to give a little bit of context, I won't give too much away, but basically, like, Riker and Picard need a starship, and he's the captain of that starship, and he's not particularly welcoming towards Picard for reasons that you'll find out later.
Yeah.
But I what's so interesting, if this had been Star Trek Discovery, he would be just another incompetent, toxic white male who needs to be put in his place, would crumble at the first sign of trouble, or would just get fucking killed, like straight up killed, and it would be funny. You're meant to laugh at him dying because he deserved it. In this, they actually have the intelligence in the scriptwriting department to say, to reveal him to actually be a pretty competent leader. He makes relatively good decisions in high stress situations, and he eventually proves himself to be a very good engineer, very good at doing the technical stuff. He's a bit quirky, like from a personality point of view. And like I say, he's got issues with Picard particularly, but you'll find out why. There's a reason for everything, and that's the thing. There's nuance. There's depth to characters.
There's a character arc.
There's something there. Yes.
Arc.
But
In modern Star Trek, there's not only characters. There's an arc with multiple characters.
He's not arbitrarily antagonistic. It's just not like he's not disagreeing with him or becoming he's not a foil for the sake of being a foil. I mean, Picard or Riker or whoever can have a different opinion or a style of doing things, but Shaw is capable, even though you don't want to go his way necessarily, but he can fully justify, and you can see his perspective on why they should do X, Y, and Z and why they shouldn't do A, B, and C. And that's what I really liked about it.
I love his intro as well, because like I don't know if Muller you've seen, I don't know if that's in episode 1 or 2, but
It's in
when they go to meet him, like they go to meet him in his ready room for dinner because they've been brought aboard his ship, and the first thing you see is he started eating without them. Because, and it's just a little thing, but it's just that little sign that he's got no fucking respect for them. Because it's like, I'm not waiting for you guys. I'm just going to start eating my meal before you get here.
Your reputation preceded you into the room.
Yes! Oh, such a good line.
Yeah, and people are, I've seen people complaining to me, oh, the writing's terrible. I'm like, what? There's so many good lines like that. And as you progress through the show, what's really interesting is the... there's an underlying an undercurrent of what we choose to leave behind us and what we end up passing down, and it becomes apparent as you move through the show, and the fact that it even has an overarching theme that they develop very well. I'm like, wow, this is what they used to do on the show. There's actual thematic elements that they keep repeating that also weave in through multiple characters, which I think is really interesting.
I really like Jack as well. I love the actor that's playing him. I think he's charismatic. He's funny. Like he can do kind of everything.
Yeah, he's great. Ed Spaliers is the name of the actor, and he's also on I guess he's the serial killer in the second half of You, the Netflix series You, if you watch that. So it's going to be airing concurrently with Picard. So I think this might be the year of Ed Spaliers because he's really good in the role.
He's great. Yeah, he's got that cockiness, that confidence about him, but when it comes time to give you those scenes where he's kind of vulnerable or stuff's going down for him, he can pull that off as well. It's great. He can do basically everything, and I just think the character is great.
Well, by the time I got to the end of the season, I thought, if they allowed it to ever be a straight white male again, I could see him be a fantastic Doctor Who.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Dave, did you watch all of them?
Yeah, I've seen all 10.
Okay. Oh, that's right, because I watched your video. Okay.
Just before we go on any further, I know Gary's got to leave because he has a pressing engagement. He has to go and see Ant-Man, and I hope it's fucking amazing for you, sir.
Dude,
I hope it's better than this.
I do too. I gotta go too later. Not now.
I'd rather sit and talk to you guys, to be honest with you.
Gary, you have my sympathies. You have my sympathies.
I'm sorry, guys, because I really just want to talk about Star Trek Picard.
I just think that in itself, hearing you say that is a huge coup.
I've seen.
When was the last time we got excited about Star Trek?
Oh, you have?
Okay.
Yeah.
After you see it, I really got to talk to you about MODOK. Okay, we got to have a conversation.
Oh no, I'll be going off on. I already know, just what he looks like, and just.
Dude, that's not even the worst of it, honestly.
Oh boy, I can't wait to miss this to go watch that. I watched the whole thing. I liked it. I thought they stuck the landing. It's got a really great ending. It's got a really, really, really great ending. And it's just a love letter. It's not, like I said, it's not reinventing the wheel. They found it again. And they just showed you, and it's a little older, but it's still a nice wheel.